So in this video I'm going to talk to you about tropical plant care and maintenance in the UK, and there's going to be quite a lot of information, so unless you have a pen and paper that you can write down all the relevant bits, then you might want to just share this video to an email so you can refer to it if you find this information useful. So to start with, let's have a look over here. To begin with, we have this Salvia involucrata here. It's in flower bud, but I can quickly show you what that flower looks like because we've got one on the other side. Look at that, that's great, isn't it? But the most attractive part of this thing is the bud, and I'll show you the big bud before it comes out. Look at that little monkey, that's great, isn't it? Anyway, these salvias, they are heavy feeders. You can see that by that interveinal discolouring. It's starting to go a little bit yellowy green. So this means it's going to need some liquid fertiliser on it, and we're going to see this around the garden quite a lot. We're going to need a lot of feeding because, you know, these tropical effect plants, they tend to be quite vigorous. They need a lot of nutrition. And on that note, right next to that, the wood and tobacco, sort of coming to the end of its flowering, but it will shoot out some more buds. But again, you know, that leaf is kind of a lime green. That should really be a dark green. So once again, you need some feeding on that. So we've got some lovely osteospermums here to throw a little bit of colour into the garden, and you see here there are loads and loads and loads of flower buds, and the reason why we have this many flower buds is because you have to keep deadheading them, and at the moment there isn't one that does require deadheading, but if you keep the old flower heads on, they will turn to seed and they will stop that plant from flowering. But on the other hand, you've got a lovely hosta here. See that one, Greek giant leaf hosta. Now it's kind of coming to the end of its flowering, but they always look really untidy. So, you know, keep them looking smart and tidy. You don't need to keep these seeds. Once the flowers are finished, that's them done. You know, take these stalks back, but take them back under the leaf so you don't see the snags. We've got a lot of canna lilies in here, some really great colours, and you know, just coming into flower. But that is just breaking out into flower. And these plants, they do like it quite damp. So during periods of drought over the summer, make sure they get at least a good bucket full of water once a week to keep them going strong. Because you know, you want it to keep flowering. If you deadhead these, then you will get new flower shoots coming through. So we've got Ricinus communis. This is a green form, and you can see there's some, again, slight discoloration, and this will need feeding. But more importantly, your big hanging baskets, the more foliage you have on these, then the more transpiration you get. And transpiration is where the plant loses moisture in order to control its temperature. So in a hanging basket like this, you're going to need to water it probably every day, and if it's a hot summer day, you're going to be looking at twice a day. Now we put some dahlias in these back borders to get some height and some colour, but the problem with these dahlias is they do tend to get very weak, strong growth. So this means that you have a storm like we've had recently, they do tend to get knocked over. So make sure that your dahlias get supported. So under here, these have all been tied in to stop them from falling over. And really, you've got to do that on a lot of these old dahlias, especially if they're growing in partial shade. So we've got some petunias growing up in this basket in the tree. The thing with petunias is that you've got to constantly deadhead them. When you deadhead them, you don't just pull the flower off, you remove the calyx and the seed pod behind it. And you need to do that in a timely fashion. So this is a constant job. You could probably do this every day, deadheading your petunias. And just be aware of any plants planted under a tree. So you've got a willow here. And you know, as you know, willows take a lot of moisture out of the ground. So where we've planted plants at the base of the willow, be aware that in periods of drought, this tree will be taking out loads and loads of moisture. So you need to make sure that these plants all under here get additional watering. Otherwise they can just wilt and, you know, fade and just not perform very well. So we have a tree fern here, and I love tree ferns. You can see by looking at this, it's a nice dark green colour, and it is because we feed it quite regularly. We water it pretty much daily, and we give it a liquid fertiliser straight down the crown, yeah, every few days really, and you can see how much new growth's come out. It's looking really, really lush. Now, I don't know if you can see it too well, but we've got a bamboo. This is a black bamboo, Philostachys nigra. Now, it's kind of different with these because if you overfeed them and overwater them, they will grow really, really well. But what they will do is they'll send out these roots. They'll just travel on. They'll start from your garden, go to your neighbour's garden, keep going. So the black bamboo is one of the forms that isn't particularly clump forming or extends out. The Philistachus aurea is a terrible one for that. But over the summer, unless it's looking as though the leaves are starting to wilt and fold up, you don't really need to water them or feed them really. Just let them do their thing, and that way they will stay contained. They will keep shooting out new stems in the spring, but you want to try and keep these actually a bit harder than the rest of your plants. So it's August and we still have some plants that haven't come into flower because we've had such a poor season this year. And this one here, I don't know what dahlia form it is, but even here you can still see that it requires more feed, and we do feed a lot our plants in this garden. And the thing, that's important. You see they've got a camellia there. Now again, that is planted next to a tree, which is fine because they like to grow in the shade. But again, they're producing their buds now. Let's have a look. Yeah, see in there, producing there. These are one of those going to be a flower bud. So these are the flower buds that are going to produce the blooms in the spring. And if this plant dries out over the summer, especially like in the previous years that we've had really hot days, no rain forever, then these can get stressed and they can drop their buds, and you don't get a bloom in the spring. So this is a crimson glory vine, and these are really vigorous. And when you've got plants that are really vigorous, put out a lot of leaf, a lot of growth, then again you can suffer problems with nutrient deficiencies. So with these vigorous plants, if you want them to grow big, then keep an eye on feeding them. Feed these once a week. This is a little black-eyed Susie that we've got growing against the frame, but it's not in the ground. I don't know if you can see that, but it is in a blue pot. Now, we had an absolute massive amount of rain yesterday, but because this has got so much foliage, again, it's going to use an awful lot of moisture. And I've just checked that pot, and that pot is dry, even though we had masses of rain yesterday. So keep an eye on those hanging baskets. Like I said earlier, keep an eye on these pot plants. They need watering. Now, when it comes to plants that are prone to being leggy, like sunflowers or this salvia here, when they get too tall, you get a strong wind and it can cause the stems to snap. So make sure that they are supported and supported well. But don't forget, just because you supported it once down here, don't forget about it. You're going to have to support it up here as well, and the higher it goes, the more support you get. You can't forget about it because you've done it once. And every few weeks, just go around and check to make sure that your supports are actually still suitable, because the plant's got bigger, it's got heavier, you might need to restake it with a stronger stake. Hang on, before I continue, look at the size of that. Look, that's my hand next to it. That is absolutely massive. The sun's on it, and you can see that from a mile. That is a beautiful dahlia. I love that. And there's something else I want to show you that's going to be really good. This here is Fuchsia boliviana, and we've not grown it before. We only came across this last year when we saw them grown quite a lot on the island of Madeira. And if you notice here, just here, look at that. Some little flower buds there, so I'm hoping, assuming that an apple isn't going to come off the tree and smash it to bits, which can happen sometimes, then we're going to have their amazing flowers. They really are fantastic, so I'm looking forward to showing you that later. Now, this is Dahlia imperialis. This is the tree dahlia from South America, and these will grow to about 3 meters, possibly even taller. Now, although they look like they have a pretty sturdy trunk, you will find if you've got a storm, that is going to snap. So you need to make sure that as that gets a bit bigger, you're going to put in some sturdy support. Otherwise, I guarantee almost every year these get knocked down by strong winds. So we've got an Abyssinian banana that we put in earlier in the year. So it's only been here 1 year. And with this sort of exotic garden, some of these plants can get absolutely huge. Particularly this canna can be a bit invasive. This dahlia can just collapse all over it. And we've got a rhododendron here, which again, that's got weird. We're going to completely take over. So you've got to make sure when you've got some lovely plants like this, to go through, make some space, pull out some stems, retie up, give it the light and the conditions it needs to grow well. All right, so you see these plants behind me, we put these in last year, but you give them the conditions they require and they will really romp away. As a typical kind of maintenance routine, you would generally water weekly if needed, and feed monthly. And then during the growing period, you might want to drop that down to feeding weekly and then watering every couple of days. It really does depend on how hot the conditions are, and you really got to play it by ear. A lot of it is down to experience. But anyway, if you've got any questions or any great comments you want to add, then leave those in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.